So Tyler, tell us about the topic for this week's webinar.
The topic for today's webinar is going to be about medication.
Again, we are not doctors, we're not therapists. We are clearly not experts by any means, any stretch of the imagination on definitely the topic that has to do with medication. Those conversations are always best had with your doctor or your medical provider. We believe very, very strongly that as parents and caregivers, you need to be empowered with information so that you can make decisions that are good for you and the person that you're caring for. Our perspective is just as valuable, but realize your perspective is also just as valuable as ours is. So we all have a different perspective. And I think really that is the power in our community, is helping everyone kind of come together, get all of the information that you need, and then ultimately you can make the best choice for your situation. So Tyler, let's jump into your perspective on medication.
Well, to be honest, I don't really know too much about it, to be honest with you, but I do know about some research that I did, and actually my mother helped me out with when it comes to medication. She's a medical assistant, and she gave me some really good insights on what different people would use for medication when it comes to autism. For example, some of the first medications were used for irritability and aggression. So when people are with autism are usually aggressive, they usually take medication and such as risperidol, clozapine, and sertraline.
While these medications are used, they're typically used to treat the symptoms of autism.
Right.
Currently, the research, there really is no medication that quote unquote will cure autism. And I think there's also an argument to be made that is there actually anything that really truly needs to be cured in autism? It is just simply the way that you are, the way that you occur. And it has some benefits and it has some real challenges that come with that as well. And oftentimes the challenges show up in the way of maybe violent behavior, depression, other types of mood disorders, that those types of medication really try to treat those kinds of symptoms. So when you take a look at the core symptoms of autism, typically it's around communication. So difficulty verbalizing, difficulty communicating with another person. Also, of course, social challenges. Where, just a difficult time socially. And then also we see a lot of this repetitive behavior or fixations as well. And these medications oftentimes will work with those symptoms.
When it comes to social behaviors, that's where it's, where they don't feel accepted. They don't feel like they're a part of something. That's where they get really irritated or aggressive, and sometimes even depression, which often leads to some sort of medication, such as Prozac, Lavorax, and Zoloft. And typically these medications are used for individuals suffering with depression. And to me, personally, I think that's kind of a little sad and such too, because you don't feel accepted or a part of that kind of stuff too, which does lead to depression. But it's one of those common traits with depression. Saying that you try so hard to socialize and be accepted, and sometimes you just don't know where to go from there.
For you in your 23 years now, you have went through many different cycles of depression that have happened. Can you tell us about some of those?
There were times where, during that little stage in high school, it feels like, it's mostly just, crying before going to bed, or just, being sad most of the time. Even even mad on certain occasions on the students and stuff at high school. Just mad at them. Those are real signs of depression. Even to the points of doing something harmful to yourself too. That I had to go through as well, threatening my own life, and in that point, saying that why bother? What matters? And such. When I'm still around and such too. It was a really tough time. It was really one of those things where it's like I tried so hard for years and years and years to be socially acceptable and to socialize and all that good and all that stuff. It's just that there are times where I just felt like I give up.
So how did you find yourself there? What led up to having those kinds of thoughts?
Well, I put those thoughts into words. I just grabbed a piece of paper on my notebook and I just start doodling and writing some stuff that my feelings and such. And no one really actually sees this stuff because this is just my private thing. And to me, it's going to make me feel a little bit better. Once I start writing, what's going on, and give them, let out those emotions and thoughts, in words, and then it slowly just feel a little bit better.
What you really were talking about is an alternative therapy to medication. So again, realizing that to medicate or not to medicate, really that is a personal choice. Mm-hmm. But there are also other types of therapy. In this particular case, it was art therapy, writing therapy. Oh, yeah. You started journaling because it was important that your feelings came out. Tyler, what were other therapies or other things that allowed you to deal with these feelings and deal with the frustration that you were having and then the way that it would manifest itself?
I think we believe that it's not really quite the answer to this kind of thing too. It's just a little temporary hit thing. So we didn't really do much about that when it comes to taking antidepressants. Mm-hmm. And all that stuff. So we didn't really quite do that. But that's our personal choice. And everyone's different in their own way. We're not, like I said, to doing that. So that's how we did. The other thing that I kind of worked on is that I managed to talk with Mr. John Whitehead about too. John Whitehead, he's like my little counselor. He's my someone I get to talk to when it comes to some problems. In fact, I've had him for quite a long time, since third grade, and we able to talk about it. He was so patient, and was able to listen and understand, and even to the point where he also said, it's okay to talk to your parents about that too. So I did. I talked to my parents about it, saying that I'm having a rough time and such. I didn't really know exactly what I said because it was hard to kind of just describe it, but they would know, what's going on and such. It's like, school bad, me, very sad, that kind of thing. Even to the point when it comes to depression, I can't even talk straight. That kind of thing. It was very, it was rough. It was very rough.
Yeah, those were definitely very challenging times, no doubt, because not only was there the communication barrier, so we didn't even really know, right? Because you couldn't verbalize those kinds of things. But little by little over the months and years, we started to understand. And as a dad, you don't really understand the extent of it. And so you make the very best choices that you can at the time. And that really was a key component is when you were 8, I think almost 9 years old, we made sure that you did have a counselor. And so you mentioned John. What would be some of the things that you did? Because we were at that point to where we were having a difficult time communicating. We knew that there was something wrong. We were having, we couldn't get the behavioral issues, kind of under control so they would be manageable in school. We were facing getting kicked out of school, those things as well. So what was the turnaround for you knowing, of course, that took time. But what were some of the things that you and John did together that was very effective and started to pull some of this turnaround for you?
I believe it was the part where we get together with other kids my age. That kind of just turned the whole thing around because I realized, hey, I'm not the only one that has these feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone kind of just shares it, but they also do it in their own different perspectives. So on why they're so having a hard time, or what do they really like to do out of their life, or what do they enjoy? What makes them happy, even too.
For those of you that are watching that are affected by autism and you have autism yourselves, you're not alone. You are not alone at all. These feelings of frustration, these feelings of meltdown, they are all very real, and they are all part of having autism. It is normal. It's natural. It is just part of having autism. Mm-hmm. But and all that really means is that there's some specific things that you also need to do in order to manage that as well.
And this is one of the most important things, is to exercise, stay active,
every day. Yeah, that's a very important deal.
Whether it's an hour or half an hour, something to do to keep me moving. Because I always see it this way, active body, active mind, and that was just my one of the basic things I do to stay focused, still keep going and try to avoid that kind of feeling of depression. And to be honest, it does happen so often too, even today, which I still have troubles going over too. So I just need to take the time to stop, take a deep breath, now release, and now you can think.
Yeah. Yep. So exercise, very, very important. The other thing, too, is the things that you focus on. We have a person in our audience that has a situation with their 7-year-old grandson, and her 7-year-old grandson is still having violent meltdowns at school. He's been on all sorts of different medications, to try to calm some of that behavior, and nothing's working. But it seems like only the meltdowns happen at school. What would be your advice for those violent meltdowns that are happening at school?
Well, back when I was 7 years old, I do remember breaking my leg and going to the hospital too. But I still had school over there too. And then after, so before break my leg, it is true. I do tend to have a little tough time with other people, especially like in recess too. Usually, if it's too loud, or if it's the whistle that's being blown, or that you're supposed to go back to school because of the whistle blowing, it's like, no, I want this. I want this all to myself. It's so quiet, no one else around. So go away. Before I kind of broke my leg, I just had this really tough time with this one kid that I didn't really like, and probably because he was doing something that was different, or being obnoxious or anything like that. So being loud. I wasn't really trained in a way to kind of just get used to people doing certain behaviors that you find not acceptable, and you gotta learn how to live with it.
Looking back as a father and what you were going through, it really boiled down to the sensory triggers. Something triggered you. And what we had to do is we had to get to the root cause of what that trigger was. And every time it was absolutely something. So whether it was something that this particular child was doing that would just build up and build up and build up, and boom, it'd be a meltdown. And then, it could become violent and unpredictable. But those meltdowns were all stem from some type of sensory trigger. Mm-hmm. Was that the case? Was there anything else that triggered a meltdown for you, Tyler, or was it just being overwhelmed with too much sensory?
It was one of the biggest triggers and such too, when it comes to seeing things that you're not used to, whether it's behaviors or loud noises or unexpected occurrences that happen, that can just build up inside your head, and just can't take it anymore. So you just have to lash out and such too.
We tried not to treat the symptoms, but we tried to get to the root cause of actually what was causing it, knowing that we had to conquer the sensory issue. That was really a big thing. We had to get some help for you from a social perspective to start being able to reach out and have, just meaningful relationships with other people. And you're still working on that. The other thing specifically around depression is that depression is extraordinarily dangerous. It's very dangerous. And as caregivers, that those signs of depression, again, we're not medical doctors. We highly, highly encourage that if you see any of those signs of depression, not eating, disengagement, again, beyond what, it becomes a bit complicated with someone with autism because they kind of just like being alone. They like to just have, quiet and stasis. And so oftentimes it's very difficult to determine when someone who has autism is really becoming depressed. But if we're seeing escalation in anger and frustration and other things, all of those definitely are warning signs. So again, I don't think the thing is, I don't think the real question is should we medicate or should we not medicate? It really is, let's get to these core issues, and then what is the best methodology to treat some of those core issues? And maybe there's alternative ideas as well. So one of those alternatives too was natural means or natural medication. So you went through a period of time in the Seattle area where we live. There was a naturopathic college called Bastyr. And in Bastyr, we went through a process called heavy metals chelation, I believe is what it's called. So, where you went on a specific diet. We also went through, being able to kind of flush or remove heavy metals from your body. But a lot of it was just kind of the naturopathic portion of this. And then also, again, with diet, and we did a section on diet, we also decided, hey, what we're going to do is we're also going to go dairy-free and gluten-free as well. So we didn't have milk, you didn't have bread, those things as well. So did that help your situation?
Yeah, actually, yes, I did try this diet. So, I did the, no gluten, no wheat, no dairy, that kind of thing. I tried it, and there was some things that worked, with the digestive system and such that kind of helped out a lot with this diet. But at the same time, to be honest, I kind of miss eating the other foods that was being provided too. I kind of like drinking dairy milk and eating French toast and such too, wheat bread, all that kind of thing. And I kind of miss that. So we tried it. It worked for a little while, but I feel really good right now too. I feel like I'm good, inside and outside. So when it comes to my diet, but it was definitely worth a try. We tried this for about a year, I think.
Yeah, it was almost 2 years, I think.
Well, I think it was almost 2 years. Yeah, that's what it was.
You did take medication for things, especially around your GI tract, so your ability to just be able to process waste, because of your diet. You really did. You had some, difficult times of just being impacted and not being able to void regularly. And we had to have medication in order to be able to kind of soften that so that you would be able to void. And I think that seems to also be a fairly common issue amongst those who have autism. It's just the ability to actually process and be able to void. And oftentimes their gut or intestines and that. And again, realize not a medical doctor, not a naturopath, not any kind of medical advice. This is just simply sharing, Tyler's experience as well. Yeah. There's no one size fits all option. And while one option may be great for one person with autism, that same option is not going to be, good for another. And realize that any medication typically is going to have some type of side effect. And sometimes those side effects are positive and other times they're very negative. But there are symptoms of autism that become very, very debilitating. And it's very difficult to make any kind of progress unless sometimes those symptoms are treated. And medication, then at that point, becomes a very good option. We always put every option on the table, whether that be medication, whether it be natural, naturopathic remedies, synthetic, certain types of therapies. We literally had everything on the table. And we really tried to take a look at every one of those options for you and try to come up with the right combination. Now, oftentimes that was really challenging because we thought, well, we went down one path as far as maybe a certain type of therapy or working with your counselor, or we got another psychologist, or and again, we tried to find exercise therapy, music therapy, drawing, journaling. We went through different pictures, social stories, all of those to try to find the right combination. Of course, music therapy, and I think music is still very important in your life today. All of that. And so again, I am not an expert as father on, marijuana or any other medication at all. But I guess my personal thought would be is that I would never want to engage in something that would be harmful, of course, to myself or my child. And so the first thing would be safety, making sure that it is safe, making sure that it's tested. And then I would really sit down and I would take a look at the research. We made sure that you got vitamins and supplements, whether we had to hide them in your food, whether we used them in powder, but every day we knew that you had the vitamins and minerals that you needed in order to continue to develop. Because if you don't have adequate water and you didn't have adequate nutrition, all of these other base things were not going to work. So we really started with the basic blocking and tackling. And quite frankly, self-regulation was a really difficult thing for you. And I mean, think back, why was it so challenging, right, to check in with yourself to say, oh man, I'm thirsty, or because now you have the ability, right? Or, oh, I'm hungry. What was different back then? And then when did you develop this ability to create this self-awareness to be able to check in with yourself?
That was to the point where I couldn't even take care of myself because, my mind is just full of things. It's not, totally right at the moment, right? In this world, present. And, that was very difficult. I had to be reminded saying, you got to drink your water, that kind of thing, to take care of yourself. And that was like one of the first things that I had to learn is to, take care of myself. Once I had mentioned that, then I can take care of others.
What are some of the other key points that you want to make sure that our audience knows about your perspective and medication?
We are always different when it comes to different medication too. Whether you can use it or you choose not to use it too. We're all different in that sort of area. But at the same time, we do kind of recommend vitamins that you can take, such as fish oil that reduce symptoms. That can in a way improve learning as well. Or some vitamin D. That's always kind of important when it comes to having your brain foods. That kind of thing. And there's always those kind of stuff. They're vitamins. They're not usually medication and stuff like that too. Where you have prescription or anything like that. They're just vitamins, especially when you're in a strict diet at the time.
And realize the use of medication, it's an option. But realize that these are tough medical decisions. There's no one right answer at all. And what's important is that you are getting that education, that you are getting that perspective, and that you are weighing all of those options to say, you know what, I know in my heart of hearts, I know my gut is telling me that this is what my person that I care for, that I love for, needs. And we're going to try it. And also realize that there's going to be some frustration that goes along with that too, no matter what therapy you choose. There's no magic pill out there, whether it be synthetic or natural, or there's no magic therapy. there are things and combinations of those therapies that ultimately will make autism more workable. But it all starts with that sensory integration, the ability to integrate and be able to process sensory. And if they can't get past those triggers, the sensory triggers, being able to control that environment, and over time, being able to adapt to an environment that's just the real world, which unexpected things are going to happen and people are going to do irritating things, so that's the part of being able to go through the training on that as well.
It's all worth a try. If it doesn't work, then try something else. Especially when you try to go for the roots of the problem. That's the most important parts that we believe is find the roots of the thing that seems off, and then see what you can do first before you try medication, and when it comes to that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. And don't be afraid to try all of those things as long as you really believe that they're in the best interest, that they are safe, that the data is well founded. Hey, I mean, every person is different, and it's definitely worth that try out there as well. So again, we're at the end of our time.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining us.
Excellent. We'll look forward to catching up with you on the next webinar.